welcome back, boys and girls, for another special edition of the Patreon series. Glad to have you. Glad to know that you're out there listening to this. I'm glad you pressed play. We have quite the show for you. Joining me in a moment is Mr. Robert Stanley. Robert Stanley is the editor of Unicus magazine. He has passionately researched UFOs for over 30 years. More recently, he has dived into the topics of angels and their interactions with humans and their supernatural lore. Tonight, he takes us on a journey, boys and girls. Buckle up. What's going on, Robert?
Hi, Michael. Nice to finally speak with you again after all these years. I'm doing fine. Hope you're well, too.
I'm great, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's always an honor and pleasure to have you here. We have some fascinating topics to discuss, as always, but before we dive into that, yes, I'd like to catch up with you just for a moment here.
Okay.
Since, the last time we talked, the world was a very different place.
Yeah, it was prior to COVID, and among other things.
COVID BC, yeah.
Yeah, before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. Things have been interesting. Okay, so my wife and I moved 5 times in 4 years.
Oh, my.
And that's always very disorienting. Like I said, I was in Hong Kong last time we spoke, and then we came back to California, was there for a while, and then we moved to Southern Florida. So it was just like a constantly hopping around, and moving is traumatic. I don't care how many times you think you do, next time's gonna be easier.
Oh, it never is.
Especially as you get older, it started like, man, am I losing my mind or no? I just can't find my keys. It's like, I don't know where I put my stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little disconcerting. But anyway, it's always good though. For some reason, moving is actually very good for us. So far. I mean, I'm not complaining. It just other than sometimes the pain of it all, literally, like walking up and down stairs like 40 times in a day.
Yeah.
I'm not used to it, and suddenly I feel like I've been run over. But so I've been on and off the radio for a while because of not only moving, but because something happened when I was living in California. I woke up one morning and I felt like I had had a conversation with some people. And the gist of it was, we would like you to do something for us, but if you do it, you have to be very careful because you could get killed. And I'm like, okay, well,
wow.
What is that exactly? And they said, we want you to reach out through the radio and the internet, whatever, and ask people who listen to you to ask us for help dealing with the fallen angels. And I was like, man, that's a really weird request, but okay. I mean, it sounded really simple, but because I'm trying to think, why would anybody trying to kill me? That was
sure.
I was really naive, but I agreed to it, and I woke up and I went and I told my wife, hey, I made an agreement, and I don't want you to worry because I'm not going to do anything crazy, it just seemed like such a simple thing to do, and later that day after lunch, I looked up on the bookshelf, and there was this book called Angelology, which I'd picked up like a year earlier and didn't read because it was fiction. And I don't know, the cover just kind of stuck out.
It stood out, yeah.
And so I thought, wow. And I picked it up, and I didn't put it down until I'd finished reading it all, cover to cover. And then I told my wife, I go, you absolutely have to read this book because that is like beyond confirmation of what I was asked to do and also what I was warned would happen if I was to call it expose or oppose, maybe both, the fallen angels.
Right.
And I didn't even know there was such a thing as called angelology. I mean, I'd heard of demonology.
But not angelology, yeah.
No. And so that was my initiation. That first whatever was I had no idea how deep I was going to go down that rabbit hole. So I'll just kind of just sum it up this way. Not only did I learn a lot, but I was able to report quite a bit about the hidden history of our relationship with these so-called Anunnaki, or shining ones, and the lower ranking shining ones that had literally become the fallen ones, and our relationship, good and bad, with them, the whole gambit. And I was just blown away by it. And then I finally realized, okay, look, so the good guys really, because they respect our free will, would they want, if we give them permission to assist us, then that opens the door, gives them more leeway to do what they need to do. Otherwise, it's going to feel and could actually be a violation of our free will, because a lot of people are working for the fallen ones, don't even know it, because they're in control here and have been for some time, relatively speaking. So that was really eye opening. And so I was like, I realized this wasn't just my imagination. This was something really much deeper and far more dynamic than I ever realized, and dangerous actually. So I started to proceed with caution. And oh, something else they told me when I woke up, I remember, if you do this, you're going to get kicked off the radio.
And is that what happened?
Yeah, yeah, because when we were
Interesting.
discussing, it was myself and a couple other guys were discussing on oh God, who's the guy that the police supposedly stepped on his neck or leaning on his neck?
George Floyd.
Yeah, thank you. So we were talking about George Floyd, and I said, because somebody had put a picture up, a mural of him up on a wall
Ah.
with angel wings,
Mm.
and I jokingly said, "Well, yes, I'm convinced he's an angel, a fallen angel." And among other things that we said that day, I don't know exactly what it was, but one person, wrote to the station manager and said, uh, "You need to get this host of yours to apologize on air,
Oh, wow. They wanted you to apologize for that.
or we're going to sue you."
Are they going to sue you? How's that even possible?
Well, whatever. These days, well, come on, dude. That was just the beginning of the whole Black Lives Matter and all that stuff.
I
People are
understand that, but I mean, how can anyone really think they could sue you for saying
they've got
anything like that?
they've got there's a okay. The dark side is very, and I don't mean the color of people's skin. I'm talking about their soul, and they're very well organized. They don't care about the law, or they certainly don't care about God's laws. They care about manipulating man's laws,
I
and
see.
they're very good at it, because there's a lot of them have risen through the ranks intentionally just so that they could screw with the rest of us. Because those of us who are not on board with the satanic agenda are considered enemies, opponents in this war in heaven, which extends down here onto earth, and it's been that way for quite some time. Okay, so like I'm just kind of summarizing what's going on here and how I got caught up in this. I would have to say somewhat naively, but hey, I did it, and so I have to own up to it.
And just one second though, Robert, for those
And
wondering, they're probably, those listening out there, when they do hear this, they're going to be wondering, who is they? Who called you? So let's just go over that for 1 second here.
yeah, who was I talking to in my astral realm? I'm going to have to say it was the Anunnaki or Shining Ones or angelic realm that is assigned to us, to this planet, and that who've been working with us on various levels in a benevolent way. And so they've kind of got caught up in this deal. I say we got caught up in the civil war or the rebellion. Humans being the so in the Anunnaki society, and they're not based on a 10th planet or Orion. That's just a generic term for beings of light that basically you can find them anywhere throughout all of creation. There's a lot of misleading stuff that's been put out there, and this is intentional because the first casualty of war is always truth, and this is a war, a civil war between, or a family feud between these different factions and or stratification. It's like, okay, so what I learned was you have your higher ranking Anunnakis, you have your mid range, and then the lower ranking. When they created us as their helpers, we were actually the fourth level. So we were the lowest ranking, newest members of that particular group here on this world. So the lowest ranking ones prior to us felt like when they were asked to look watch over us, they ended up doing something more than that. They ended up perverting and distorting everything and turning us into their slaves. And that was never part of the plan, but that's what their agenda became, and that was part of the rebellion. I mean, obviously it didn't start here, but it we got caught up in that civil war, and they taught us things like weapons, um, pharmaceuticals. That's actually directly from them. Makeup, jewelry. Just
Everything. Yeah, war.
basically, they gave us their society, but not the high-ranking part of it. Though that kind of filters through occasionally when you see some of the higher truths within. I know they typically couch it in religious terms because that's another way of filtering and controlling the information, which could liberate us. But ultimately, we're not in a position to deal with even the lower ranking ones because we rank below them. And this is not a judgment. I'm just telling you the way it's stratified in uh what do they call it, like a caste system, or even like in a monarchy you have, and that's really what it is. It's more like a monarchy, but not like the crazy mad monarchs that we see on this planet. It's a lot more divinely based. I mean, it works on God's natural law, and they are loyal to God. But I mean, some of them obviously went off into their own little tangent, and it actually has gotten to the point where it's out of control, and that's why ultimately why this so-called war began, and why ultimately all those on the dark side are going to be destroyed. They have to be, because otherwise they're going to destroy all of creation. So you see it on a microcosm here on this planet, how these so-called globalists, they're really Satanists, meaning they're adversaries of God and all of God's creation. So obviously they're behind blowing things up, and injecting things into people that make
That's
them
right.
sick and die. It's just like it's totally contrary to God's plan. They are the adversaries of God. That's what Satan means, is adversary. So they're Satanists, and in the true sense of the word. Anyway, yeah, so it seems like a very simple thing to ask people to ask for assistance from the angelic realm, or the higher ranking Anunnaki. Ultimately, I was able to describe it in very, very, very specific terms and give people access to books that other people had written, some phenomenal researchers in that field, way, way light years beyond what Sitchin's fiction and other people. So yeah, I could see where that would be a threat. Anyway, the reason I got kicked off the radio, like I said, was it seemed pretty mundane. But so
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
producer, the manager said, we need you to go on and apologize.
Apologize. Oh God.
We've already deleted that episode from our archives. And I said,
Oh.
okay, And then I talked to my wife, and she goes, you can't do that, because what are you going to do the next time somebody complains? You're going to apologize again and have your show deleted? What's the point? Why are you even doing? Why would you want to do that? Okay, well, that makes sense. And then
I
I
mean, you didn't
just,
really even say anything that bad, though, in my opinion.
well, look, whatever. It wasn't just me. It was other people. They were saying like, yeah, he's probably not dead, and they're just laughing and whatever. It was something that I could see where it could be misconstrued.
Well, let's put it this way, Robert. I would have been kicked off a long time ago. I mean, I did talk about George Floyd, and, I said only in America you would have a crackhead essentially immortalized and made into a statue.
Yeah, but that's what the dark side does. They pervert and distort and invert everything. And so here's the thing: you can't be logical with an illogical or criminally insane group that are conspiring to destroy all of creation, so that they can supposedly reign supreme. It's um, it's a conundrum. All right,
It
so
is a conundrum, and that's what we have in America. Though lots of people would use the name and the power of God to justify what they do and
I
what they
know.
want to subject you towards.
Yeah, and I'm not religious. Okay, but what I've come to understand is that
I'm not either, but I've read the Bible and I understand the story of the Anunnaki, and we're going to get into Zachariah Sitchin and Eric von Daniken in a moment here.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, we'll pick up on that and we'll go through that. But again,
Well,
going back to the whole
yeah,
George
wait, wait,
Floyd thing,
wait,
I don't have any hate for any religion or
yeah, me
any
either.
ethnic group or anything of that nature. Just to set the record straight, in case
Yeah.
anyone's listening to this and they're like, "Oh, these are just two guys being angry," but that's not the case.
Not at all. I'm very
Far
happy,
from
loving
it.
person.
Absolutely.
But okay, so somehow I'm going to get you a summary briefing with links to other books that I think
Sure.
you'll find fascinating, and they're not religious, although it will touch on aspects of God and specifically Jesus, who I never in my life up until recently considered to be God or an aspect of God. I couldn't, because nobody explained it to me in a way that I found to be credible. But that has changed. And I think you remember the story I told you about how I had that out of body experience back in
Sure.
1985.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I left my body and I entered the light, that was the body of God called, I think the Gnostics call it the pleroma. And then when the being came up to me and faced me, and I've always said it looked like Jesus, except he was glowing brighter than the light that we were in. And actually, I know now for what he said to me wasn't, I, I am your father. What he said is, I am the father, which I couldn't accept that either because I know what that means. He was saying, I'm God. And he looked like Jesus. And part of me was just really couldn't accept that. It didn't make any sense up until recently. So not only was the light was God, this emanation, this avatar that God created to interface with us, and more importantly, to spearhead this war in heaven. Um, we loosely call that Jesus, and it was absolutely intentional. There was no fluke. It was. I've often wondered for decades, actually, why would Jesus or God interfere and interact with me? Um, and the answer is because I had interrupted that blood sacrifice with that boy earlier in the day. And that's why the dark side was coming after me.
Wait a minute. What thing did you intervene on?
Okay, so I was a security guard. I was 25. I
Oh,
was
okay.
security guard in Malibu. And this boy ran into a sliding glass door and shattered it with his face and was bleeding to death in the house, the beach house. This is not part of my job. Just want to be clear. I'm just a security guard, but I just instinctively sprinted to the house, went in there, called 911. The paramedics showed up very, very quickly and were able to stabilize the boy on the way to. There's no hospitals in Malibu, just to be clear. The closest one is at least a half an hour away. And so without that me and triggering the response of the paramedics, he would have died in that house that day, that afternoon. He would have bled out. And the thing was, when it was all happening, I got the distinct impression somehow that he was hearing voices. I didn't know anything about schizophrenia or possession at that time, but I also, when I had that thought, that realization, that's when I saw something manifest in the room that looked like smaller than the size of a golf ball, but black. There was probably half a dozen of them, and they were floating up by the ceiling. And I looked at them and I thought, man, those look like parasites. And then they slowly faded out, and but there was so much going on. I couldn't really think about it at the time.
So these were like black orbs.
Yeah.
It's also a little scary to think that.
Well,
Because I have a friend. Well, I don't know if I should call him a friend, but someone that I know from my past.
hmm
Someone I went to school with at one time, and he became a satanic priest down where I live.
oh God.
Yes, and I was watching one of his videos. Very randomly, he does these tarot readings online, and in the video, his phone falls down off the tripod. But before that, you see this black orb sort of manifest and just like shoot through the screen in the beginning, and
Whoa.
then a few moments later, the phone falls.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here's the problem. They're around us all the time, and they're monitoring everything that we do, and then relaying that back to whomever created those things. And they may be technology, or they could be simply thought forms, and this is not to trivialize it, by the way, but manifesting artificial life forms or thought forms is something that is known on this world. The Tibetan Buddhists know this. They call them tulpas, and that's just one instance or example. Anyway, okay, so the bottom line is this: I would have never gone up onto the mountain that night if I hadn't been in the midst of
Right.
that
Yeah.
trauma, right? And then because they started coming after me after the boy left, then they were attacking me etherically, and I could feel it, and I didn't really know what it was. Actually, I didn't know anything that was going on. It was just so spontaneous, and uh, in retrospect, everything makes sense now, but it's taken me literally decades to unravel that Gordian knot. I mean, it's just, it was one of those events in my life that was not only transformational, it's something. My wife said, "Why are you obsessed with that?" And I said, "Because I want to understand. It's my life. Don't you think I should understand what's going on?" Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
and here's the thing, Michael. Every time I thought knew some part of me goes, well, there's more to the story, and eventually you're going to get it. You know, just don't give up.
That's
And
usually what happens.
yeah, well, but here's why. It's because of this war in heaven, which again extends down onto earth. The conflict is raging here too, and sometimes it flows in very strongly into the planet. Sometimes it has to recede because it's being pushed back by the benevolent angels of light. And so anyway,
So you don't believe in coincidence?
not at all.
There you
The
go.
word
Yeah.
means coincide, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's not random. If I know what you're saying,
Yeah.
coincidence means the way we use the word, but it really is. If you say it the other way, it's coincidence. So everything coincides. It's and because it's all connected. That was the other thing they showed me. So it's not like I just had this interface with God, Jesus, whatever, and then that's it. I mean, once you're touched by that light, that intelligence, it's like it alters you permanently, and it didn't leave me. But because I'm not religious, and actually neither is God. God didn't create religion. We did. And I think we were actually guided to do that by the fallen ones so that we could be manipulated further by them instead of
Right.
having a direct relationship with God. No intermediaries, no, politicization
It's a
of
social construct, in other words.
it's a government. Yeah,
Right.
it's what I say is it's the politics of spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the bottom line is this for me. I never gave up on God. I never really had any affection or
You
respect.
didn't have any. That's not kind of what you probably weren't raised that way.
Well, I told you my dad was a minister.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. Okay, so yeah, you were raised that way.
But no, yeah, but my dad was not adamant. He didn't like enforce
Enforce
that.
it on you? Okay.
Oh no, no. But I mean, and the thing about it is, he was a disciple of Yogananda before he became ordained by Yogananda, and that was a cult. I mean, I know a lot of people think he was just as benevolent, whatever, but he practiced the dark arts
I see.
in India, and he knew how to hypnotize people very well. And I'm not making that up, by the way. That's in the public record. And I'm not here to bash anybody because I know a lot of people really adore him. But anyway,
That's okay.
no, but I'm
It's
trying.
all
The
good.
reason I'm even mentioning is because I always felt there was something creepy about religion,
Well, there
and
is.
firsthand, I knew that there was something wrong with that whole group that my dad was in, and I found out later, only incrementally as I grew up, I heard things and I read things. I was like, "Whoa, okay, wow." Uh, um, yeah, just anyway, I'm it's like I'm allergic to it, and there's a reason for it, because it's really very difficult to have an honest, open relationship with God if you're stuck in this dogma of religion. It's a very narrow path, and it's a narrative that doesn't allow for things, anything outside of their little box is considered heretical. So, and that's not how God works.
No, not at all.
I'm sorry, it's not really funny, but I mean,
Oh, it is kind of funny.
in retrospect, it is kind of funny because I thought there was something wrong with me.
No, not at all. There's nothing
I
wrong with you.
No, no, but I mean socially that I was unable to adhere to that, to conform.
No, it's normal to be that way. I mean, some parents, I should say, they would look at it as there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
But the fact that you did not conform or give into a lot of it, it just means you're a thinking man. That's all.
Well, also because I, for whatever reason, I'd have to say I was spared from a lot of the indoctrination. Even school, I didn't go to school much. I was traveling with my parents a lot and teaching myself by reading every day. And also, I mean, I did like when you take the work with you. I forget what that's called. It's not homework. It's something else. Anyway, I had to do my studies when I was traveling, and then submit it after I got back. So I broke from my peers even at a young age.
Yeah. So in other words, you kind of developed a lot quicker and faster and had much more knowledge at an early age than someone else at that age, most likely. That
Yeah,
probably definitely shaped who you are today.
yeah, but it also I became ostracized from my peer group,
It
and
happens. Yeah.
yeah, I know, and it was not a pleasant feeling,
Yeah.
and especially after I was had that experience up in the mountain, because and this is again why so much of that event had to be blocked from my mind because as a young man of 25, working around a lot of very affluent people in Malibu, as you know, aside from my friends, neighbors, if I had started saying things like, you know, I met God or I met Jesus, and
Well, that would be a different story. Yeah.
yeah, that could be
They
a
would think
one-way
you're,
ticket to a little rubber room with a white
yeah,
coat.
they would not hang around with you.
Well, that'd be the very least. Yeah, that'd be the very least. I mean, so anyway, it all worked out the way it was supposed to, and but again, this is why I was very leery about after I got kicked off the radio. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not doing that anymore. I'll
And
have to
when,
find another way.
what year was this when you got booted?
I'm gonna say 2021.
Oh, okay. Okay. Not that long ago then.
Wasn't that long ago, so I've been very sporadic about coming back, and I did eventually get back on KGRA after the station manager left.
Oh, is that where, was that where it happened?
Yeah, it's
KGRA.
nothing to
Okay.
do with them. Okay, it has nothing. Those
Sure.
guys are very nice to me. I really appreciate working with them. But so the new station manager said, "Yeah, yeah, Robert, come on, you can come back." And we did some stuff together. And then, like I said, I had to, you know, there's just too much going on in my life. But I've always in the back of my mind now, I've been thinking, especially now they're talking of not only debanking people and digital currency and social credit score and all that crap. I was like, man, it's not just me. I'm married. I have a wife and a son, and I don't want them to be jeopardized.
Right.
So I can and I mean, okay, look, I know it's important that I get some of this information out to people who haven't heard it before, uh, but I have to balance that out with the fact that this is a real, it's a real danger
The real
to,
issue.
yeah, yeah. So I did delete unicusmagazine.com as a precautionary measure. I didn't do any media for quite a few months, and so I, but I did finally figure out, look, I can still get information out, but just be a little bit more cautious about what I say and who I say it to and where I post that information because not all platforms are equal,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
I ended up creating a membership website, and there's almost 400 people in there now, but that's that's still not what I wanted to do. I think I was reaching a lot more people with just an open website as opposed to you have to. It's not, you know, I'm not charging, but anyway, I wanted to have some privacy and hopefully not get into trouble and or just have my stuff pulled.
Yeah, well, nowadays it's so easy, Robert, as you know. Of course, you're using your real name,
Mhm.
and that could lead to a lot of trouble for you. If somebody wants to potentially, do any of these things to you. That's one of the reasons why I don't really use my real name here, even though my real name is Michael, but not Deacon,
Yeah.
obviously. But that's one of the reasons why some people, they get really angry, they get really crazy, and they want to go after you or go after people that know you.
Yeah.
It's a sickening thing.
Well, okay, but so and I think we've discussed this before. Somebody reminded me about it yesterday when I was doing my own show. So this lady, very kindly old lady, she calls up and she says, "I remember you told me something very important about being calm and kind and creative." And I was like, "Yeah, thank you." It's important to remain resonant in the midst of all the dissonance that's being generated here, not just intellectually but physically in our cells of our body with radiation and other things, other toxins. So what we can do is remain calm in the midst of a crisis. I know that that sounds simple, but it is, and I know damn well it's not. Be kind when others are being cruel, and being creative when others are being destructive. And I would have to say, most importantly, being courageous when others are scared. Um, and the reason that's all that is important is because it does increase and or maintain one's resonant field. Resonance is very important because that's what connects us specifically through the heart chakra or sacred heart, however you want to look at it. It connects us to the cosmic web of light, which is, if you looked at that, the totality of it, it would have to be like the brain of God. not just the mind, but we know that the brain is a it's not where all the information is stored, but it's like a transceiver. So the web of light, this cosmic web of light, is something that most people are still not aware of, but they should be. And that was shown to me, and then later explained to me that its primary function is the transfer of consciousness throughout all of creation. And why that's important is because when, and this is, like I said, this is a conflict, this is a war. When you're on a battlefield, the last thing you want to do is have a lack of intelligence, and I don't mean smart. I mean information. Uh, they just call it intelligence, but they also call it situational awareness, because if you are not fully aware of your surroundings and the potential threats, you're going to get captured or killed. And most of us don't even realize that we're captured here at this
Already.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll give you a really brief example. The word internet, everybody think you know what that means, right?
Right.
Inter means to bury. Net, obviously, everybody knows what a net is to ensnare. So was it just a coincidence they used that terminology? No, because that's how they work. They work. If you know what you're looking at, you can see everything they're doing. It's not. It's like hidden. It's not really hidden. It's just for if you're not initiated, and it's always been that way. Even for the benevolent ones, they leave all this iconography out there for us to look at, and unless you've been initiated, you don't understand it. I mean, the context of it, all the symbology, and it does have an effect on us. It really does, because we're conscious beings. And so, uh, anyway, the big transformation, I think, is going to be complete. Part of what I was shown by God when I asked was in 2013, how is this going to be resolved? Because I don't think we can do it on our own. And I was shown this brief little movie of how everything was going to be revealed between 2013 and 2023. When when they said everything, or when he said everything, I really thought that was everything on Earth. I didn't realize it was going to be everything throughout creation. And boy, was I shocked when that started coming in. So it's not fully my responsibility to share that with everybody, but I like I said, there's this summary briefing I need to send you to kind of let you do your own homework and come to your own conclusions about what everything, because actually, let me rephrase that. Everything that we're capable of comprehending would be revealed. That was made clear to me recently. Within the last few months, I've been given a lot more information, and so I have to reposition my perspective every time I'm given another download like that. Look, some of it's just intuitive or telepathic, but others is very more analog. It's like, books or articles or shows like this, whatever. It's just information. And again, this is a big part of what we do is we're learning. Oh, that was the other thing I was shown recently. This is not a futile exercise here. That what's going on, this so-called battle, war, whatever. Everything's being recorded. Everything that's happening in this conflict is being recorded. And when it's over, and it will be, the dark side that loses everything, the recording will be made available to future generations for eternity. So anytime some soul decides to get a wild hair up there or whatever, they're going to be taken to this viewing area, and they're going to say, okay, look, you have free will, but we had to increase the restrictions on your free will because we don't want this to ever happen again. It's just not going to happen again. And then they run the hologram or whatever it is, the recording for that individual, or maybe a group of individuals think that they are going to suddenly collaborate or conspire and start another rebellion, and then no, you're not, and here's why. It's all very intelligent, and it truly is benevolent, but it got a little out of hand because, and again, I do think that God already knew that was going to be the case, but it would be a teachable moment or series of moments, events, and that's why it's being recorded. And the timetable is something that's very frustrating to us because we have such short physical lives here, which is an anomaly. It's not supposed to be like that. But anyway, for whatever reason or reasons, that's the way we're designed, probably to control us more easily. But um, the time scale is something that's hard for us to comprehend because it's so big, and it involves way more than just our planet or solar system. Although my understanding is that we're literally on the front lines, which extend out enormously. But we happen to be planet Earth happens to be considered planet zero, and I believe that's why God chose to create an avatar that would incarnate or manifest here the way it did in the form of what we call Jesus to literally you remember that this is a cheesy analogy, I'm sorry, Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf said you will not pass.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically like that. Jesus drew a line in the sand and said, you're not, if you cross this line, that's it, we're coming after you and we're going to dismantle your little evil empire. Because if he didn't, they were going to encroach on all of creation. I mean, that's what they've been doing. It's like a virus or whatever, mold or something. They're never going to stop. They're never satisfied with what they have. And
And
it's
Robert, let me just quickly ask this question here, and just to clarify, you said, you're being contacted here by God,
I know
by maybe even Enki. I'm sure
I'd said that in the past. I was
you've
wrong.
said that. Well, here's the thing. I was gonna get to, there's people who channel, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're kind of misled at times.
Yep.
Do you think you've been misled, Robert, at all by these people, or these people, these entities? Do you think perhaps, they're giving you false information, or do you think for sure that they are giving you the proper information to relay?
It's both. It's
It's a
both. I
little bit
mean,
of both. Okay.
in war, and I've had to apologize publicly many times now for the errors that I've made, but it was simply a misunderstanding
I
or
see.
was
Okay.
misled, like you just said.
Sure.
And that doesn't absolve me because when I'm taking responsibility to speak publicly, which we're doing now, to God knows how many people about something that really impacts everyone, it's extremely important that I do the best job I can with whatever information I have available to me. But are they manipulate? Does the dark side manipulate us and violate our free will? Of course they do. And oftentimes, as it says in the different scriptures, that they can appear as angels of light. Well, because they were angels
Right.
of light, for until they fell into darkness. So they know how to do that routine, and of course they target some people more than others. I mean they really like the easy targets,
Some are more susceptible. Sure.
right? But I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. But they thought I was a high value target because I'm again I'm just assuming this, but I really feel like it's the case because God and the true angels of light have been working with me to help humanity, and in a non-religious way, simply reporting information that can empower people if they so choose. All right, it's not. I'm not trying to force anybody to do anything or threaten. But anyway, the dark side, yes, they're masters of manipulation. They don't know how to create, so they manipulate, and they have zero compassion. Like I said, they're a psychopath as opposed to empath. And yeah, of course, especially when I was younger, it was pretty easy to mislead me because I didn't have access to or exposure to the what I would consider to be more advanced levels of learning. And again, that's what I'm going to send you and or anybody who
Sure.
wants
Yeah. We could put that up
anybody.
there.
Okay, but anybody who wants to connect or have that summary we're talking about here that I put together, you can email me at unicuseditor@gmail.com. Unicus is spelled UNICUS editor@gmail.com, and I'll just send you it, and then you do whatever you want with it. But it's kind of this way: it's a blessing and a burden. It's work, but I feel it's very rewarding. In fact, okay, look, I'll summarize it this way: outside of the nonsense, the corruption, the cruelty that's going on here, the way creation really works, my understanding is it's a meritocracy. And uh, for people who don't know what that means, it just means the merit system. So if you are service to others, you increase your credit or your standing or your abilities within that system. If you're service to self, if you're selfish and cruel and just really don't care about anybody else but yourself, you're actually hurting yourself more than anybody else because you're creating a deficit within the meritocracy. And you can't blame anybody else for what these choices you make and the actions you take ultimately determine where you go within creation. And let me tell you something, it's way beyond what we can even comprehend. Well, the little bit that I've seen is just like mind-boggling and overwhelming because it's so beautiful. It's so loving. There's so much light everywhere and joy. It's like it's another reason why a lot of people who've had near-death experiences are told it's time for you to go back now, and you're going to forget a lot of what you've seen here. And they're like, no, I'm not. I don't want to, and I don't want to leave. And I said, well, you have to leave now, and we have to we have to help you forget a lot of this because otherwise, when you go back, you're not going to do well because the juxtaposition is so ridiculously harsh, stark. I mean. Uh, most of us don't really want to be here if we could be there in a really truly loving environment with that much creativity and health and happiness. It's but temporarily a lot of us have chosen to come down into these regions that really 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 need assistance temporarily in this conflict. So I know that most people have heard the term great reset that
Sure.
the globalists are calling it. Some people say, well, the opposite of that is the Great Awakening, and Satanists can't stop the Great Awakening. I prefer to call it the Divine Reset because that's the way it was shown to me was that it isn't just on this planet, but once this planet is liberated, that's it. It'll be we're not going to have duality here anymore, and that's actually throughout all of creation. Of course, it's going to take longer once we're liberated here. I don't know how much longer it takes to get to the rest of it, but it's a bit
Some
inconsequential.
say that's what Satan did for all of humanity back in Adam and Eve when he tempted Eve to eat the apple.
Yeah, right.
Some say Satan is the first humanist.
I know. I know. I realize. In any
It's a
case,
weird conundrum, yes.
yeah. Well, it's called a satanic inversion, where they flip everything upside down,
That
inside out,
well,
whatever.
sure, that too, but it's a fun argument.
Well, okay, yeah. It's kind of funny, but it's also phony in the sense that in Jewish mysticism and even Islamic, and that's a very misleading term. Mysticism is a way of saying I don't believe what you're saying.
Exactly, it's a little bastardized.
Yeah. So what I found was that okay, in the Anunnaki language, uh, they the word that they use for a scientist is serpent, and a low-ranking scientist is called a one-eyed serpent, and a higher-ranking or higher knowledged um, scientist is called a two-eyed serpent. So that kind of gives you an idea about the logo you're using, the one eye,
Yeah,
one-eyed
yes.
serpent, or the one-eyed scientist that represents the Anunnaki lower-ranking ones that took control of us in this world in this conflict. But so to get back to one of the things I found in the it's very disturbing. Actually, if there's any children here, I would ask, if your parents if there's parents in the room and you got kids, I would say turn off the radio right now.
Earmuffs, yes.
Whatever, don't let your kids hear this. Um, there's a lot of things in mysticism that are under the banner of mysticism that I find very confusing. But anyway, Samael I would consider to be one of the Watcher lower ranking scientists of the Anunnaki, and he came allegedly to Adam, or excuse me, came to Eve with a child, a young boy, and said, "I want you to take care of this child for me while I'm gone." So I'm assuming she already knew who he was. But anyway, uh, when Adam returned, the child wouldn't stop crying and screaming and throwing a tantrum. Allegedly, he killed that child and ate it, and Eve ate of that as well. So this thing about the forbidden fruit being an apple, uh, probably not. And the only reason I would even entertain this or mention it is because of all the child trafficking and the adrenochrome and all this other garbage that's going on. It seems to me it's quite possible if the fallen ones, taught us a lot of things, about how to commit war with weapons of war and
Right.
that other stuff. It's possible they literally tricked us into becoming, I don't know what you call it. It's like cannibalism, I guess.
Well, basically, yeah.
All right. So, and there was a supernatural component to all of this stuff. But anyway, in one of the books that I'll send you if you haven't read it yet, it's called The Shining Ones by Christian O'Brien. Way beyond anything I've ever read before. I mean, obviously, there's more to the whole story, but he said that the higher ranking Anunnaki, there was a rebellion, and they literally incarcerated some of the lower ranking ones that had rebelled. They incarcerated them here, and then they requested more help. More lower ranking ones showed up, and ultimately they rebelled as well, meaning that they refused to do hard labor. Now, I've often thought, well, if they're so advanced, why would they even don't they have technology to do this stuff?
Right.
So, but then I remembered, no, that's what you do to prisoners is you put them into like a rock quarry or, picking up trash on the side of the road. It's just hard labor. And they complained fiercely. And ultimately, there was an agreement that was reached. And the higher ranking ones said, okay, look, we're going to create with the primitive man, we're going to genetically create another tier within our system, our society, and they will be here to help. And it wasn't to mine gold; it was just generally to do, more hard labor, which I think is pretty insane. But whatever. When they created us, it wasn't just a man and a woman; it was a group of men and a group of women called the Adamas and the excuse me, yeah, Adamas, sometimes called Adapas or Evas. And there was a group of them that they, after being created, I think it was through, like test tube babies, they put them in the Levant down below where they had the base there on Mount Hermon, or at least one of their main bases was there at Mount Hermon. And they instructed some of the lower ranking ones to watch us and make sure that we were all going to be okay because we were obviously a newly formed, the Homo sapiens is what we call ourselves now. But so they're not our creators; they're our manipulators and or pseudo creators because even though the benevolent ones had a good intention, ultimately things went completely awry, and that's why the whole thing had to be wiped out. And it wasn't so much a flood. You'll read some of the actual accounts of what really happened, and it reminds me of mass hypnosis or mass hysteria, where people just start running around killing each other because they've lost their minds. And the only way to induce something like that remotely, as far as I know, is ionized radiation. So it wasn't just a flood. It was it was brutal. And this was a police action that the higher ranking ones had to take, but ultimately they were given a second chance. Oh man,
I'm not here.
I wish I knew how to turn off these damn um, alerts.
Oh, you have a turn the silent mode on there.
On where?
It should be on the left-hand side of your phone there. Or if
Oh,
you're on a computer,
it's on my computer. Anyway, I'll look for it later.
don't worry, it's okay.
Turn off.
Somewhere
Whatever.
on Skype there.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah.